On today's episode, we are going to talk about permits. There are two types of permits basically for this episode. That is a building permit and occupancy permit. Today, we are going to briefly explain what they are and how to acquire them and the consequences of not having them at all. My name is Derek Esiedu and I'll be your host. This is Plan Talk Ghana. When we talk about permits, they are written documents that provides approval to individual for carrying out any developmental project at all in Ghana. The emphasis is written approval, a document that carries or gives individual the go-ahead to carry any construction at all on a piece of land anywhere in the country. In Ghana, under the Land Use and Spatial Planning Acts 2016 and 1925, as well as some building regulations and building codes, individuals that seek to acquire or file a process of acquiring permits must first of all have legal title to the land in which he or she wants to acquire the permit. Nti yɛfa ne sɛ ɔwɔ asase ɛna asase na wɔn no ɔpɛ sɛ ɔsi dan si so. Dan na ɔpɛ sɛ ɔsi si so no ɛwɔ sɛ ɔkɔgye ho nkrataa a yɛfrɛ no permit ansa na watumi asi dan no. Ɛna ansa na ɔbɛkɔ assembly hɔ sɛ ɔkɔgye permit go ahead akɔkɔsi dan no. You have to make sure say you have a legal title to the land. Asase na ɛda hɔ no odin ɛna ɛda asase na no. This is the first criteria for filing a building permit. Without legal title to the land, you are not qualified to have a building permit. After this process is done, you have to submit a set of building drawings into Dina Opesosino, the way a designer, AFFA, pillars are the best iron rod, any kitchen, bedroom, say a designer, that kind of drawing, and other assembly. Remember, I was also provided 3 sets of drawings. 3 sets of drawing you mount it on a permanent material. And at this particular drawing, I will say a certified architecture. And a board drawing we mount we was signed in the day at was. Say documents we need to be ready what about assembly? Then assembly will sit down with its committee. Committee now assembly, it consists of the fire service, it consists of the EPA, different sections comes together for them to assess the structural integrity of the building. Sana dino na huode esifa, dino say see a embubumbu, dino say see a bebo amount for buying. When they are through with this particular process, now so more convinced said application now put in place and it has meet all criteria. Then they will send you a notice for you to come and pick your document. But then we are having 3 conditions. First of all, we will give you approval, straightforward approval from the assembly. Second, they are going to give you approval with caution. It means that they are going to give you approval though, but there are certain changes that needs to be done. So after you make the changes, then they are going to give you the approval. And then thirdly, they are not going to give you any approval at all because of 1, 2 things. Even with all these things, the assembly will call you to have a personal conversation with you why they are declining your application, why there are some changes that needs to be done. At the end of the day, they say, oh shit, nasa the assembly ni kaino and soon and yawo de nasa oh feel say there be assembly no when did the year. You have the chance to further push this particular process to the High Court. You have the chance to actually file a complaint for them to further investigate your building plans or your building documents. Data from the District Assembly emphasize on the fact that almost 60 to 80% of individuals do not acquire permits the right way before starting construction. And then, to be honest, what do you think is the case for the 60 to 80%? It's a huge number. First of all, the permits process in Ghana. People used to say that the permits process is too slow. And then somehow, some way, I kind of agree with them. Because now, there have been some changes with the planning regulation. as we are currently speaking now, the planning application process take only 30 days, that is up to a month, for you to receive either approval or rejection with notice. But then here lies the case, some people do not have up to a month to start their construction. So at the end of the day, they just proceed with the building. Secondly, it's expensive. Now here lies the case, if you want a correct or authentic building permit in Ghana, the architecture comes in. If it is 2 or more story building, the fire service comes in. Depending on the location of where you are putting the structure, the EPA comes in. The urban or feeder rules also come in if that particular structure you are putting in place is going to generate traffic or not. So at the end of the day, you realize that it might be a simple constructional work, but then the number of committees that are going to step in to evaluate your documents, you realize that at a point you will give up. At a point you give up. You will skip the process and then you start your building or you start your construction. The third thing that we want to look at is that people in certain parts of Ghana do not even know what building permit is. They don't know what building permit is. They don't know the process to acquire a building permit. They don't even know the importance or the relevance of building permit. There is a need for us to provide education to such people. The fourth thing we are going to look at is that the bureaucratic nature is a little bit difficult and sometimes it's unclear. And you know, if a district assembly is supposed to manage a population of about 20,000 to 50,000 to 70,000, look at the total number of houses. And a day, if you are supposed to have about 20 people visiting the physical planning office for permit application process, it is going to be difficult for the planner to engage them one after the other to provide the education and the counseling that they need. So at the end of the day, most people that are a little bit illiterate, who cannot really necessarily read and write, end up bypassing this whole process and starting their building or their construction. Because Ghana, the system that we are practicing here, it tends, or it is easier to do wrong rather than to do right. If you're supposed to ethically follow every process to the core, at the end of the day, it's easier to do wrong than to do right. What does this actually mean for tenants? The first thing that we are going to look at is safety. Before every building is given permit approval or occupancy permit, there are a set of committees that check the structural integrity, as said earlier, to confirm that the building is suitable for human habitation. So human beings can actually occupy that particular section and then nothing bad is going to happen to them. But then here lies the case, because they bypass the appropriate authority, there is no determined or predetermined condition to guarantee whether the structure is actually stable or not, whether the structure is safe or not. There is no way to determine it. The second thing we are going to look at is that the legal status. Now, if governments decide to carry out demolition activity, whether government wants to secure a piece of land for road expansion, whether government wants to secure a piece of land for infrastructure in terms of drains, in terms of telecommunication network, if the individual do not have permits for that particular piece of land or documents for that particular piece of land, in terms of compensation, the government of Ghana is not necessarily obliged to provide compensation to such people or person affected by the demolition exercise. We are supposed to take note and be cautious here. If you do not have approval for the housing unit 1, for the land, it's even a different case too. Whenever there is a demolition activity the government wants to secure, here lies the case, whether you have building permits, permit approval, occupancy permit or not, the government has the right under the constitution to purchase that particular piece of land for general public. That is what we call it, for the good or the betterment of the general public. So the government has the right to purchase your land and pay compensation, adequate or substantial compensation. But here lies the case, Dina is assassination, Dina only one crata said Dina crazy. So at the end of the day, the government is not obliged to pay any kind of compensation to you. Now, the last thing that we are going to look at is the landlord accountability. In case there is any crisis or there is any conflict between the landlord and the tenant, here lies the case: there is no legal backing that protects the tenant in that particular house, because there is no guarantee or there is no approval or there is no legal document that that particular unit of housing is supposed to exist at that particular point in time. So here, the tenant, whatever happens, it happens at the tenant's own cost. What the system should actually do, to be honest, I will never go for the fact that buildings are supposed to be demolished. A lecturer once said that whenever we carry out demolition activities, it's as a result of planning failure. And I agree with his philosophy. I am not into the fact or the point that buildings that are constructed without legal documents or without permit or occupancy permit should be demolished. No. But then here lies the case: after the buildings has been developed, if the buildings are developed in a sound or suitable environment, if all the structural integrity is checked or ticked, then at the end of the day, there's supposed to be a fine that is issued by the assembly for the person violating the order, that is building before the permit. The fine is supposed to pay, then the individual is supposed to follow the process to acquire the permit. And again, now the new planning system in Ghana has made it very easy and simple for all the units to be available in one particular office. So the Works and Housing Department, the EPA, the Fire Service, they are all available as the one particular office, whether it's the District Assembly Office or the Metropolitan Assembly. They are all available there. So the paperwork or the documents move from one office to another. They just sign and endorse and check and tick, and then we are ready to go. The reality in Ghana is that most of us have lived or currently living in houses that are not permitted or houses that do not have occupancy permits. This is not judgmental. It's the consequences of planning failure here in Ghana. But understanding this matters. It matters when you are negotiating for your rent. It matters when something goes wrong with the building. It matters when the government decides to carry out a demolition exercise. Now, the last thing I want to talk about briefly is occupancy permit. After you secure your building permit and then you start your building, if everything is set, you want to build a 2-unit housing block, you are done with your building, everything is set. Now the assembly has to come and inspect if everything that is physically on the land is actually present on the paper. When everything is intact or everything is checked, they give you something we call the occupancy permit. So they are like, why are they more? This is when we say that the building is legally, structurally, and physically sound for human habitation. This is Plant of Ghana, and my name is D. the P. Derek the Planner. Thank you.